Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us and welcome to 2017. Today we're going to begin our year with circling the wagons and bringing all the activists together. I've invited Kevin Blanch to be with us, and because we keep having these phone call problems, I decided I'd just call him as soon as I got on the air. So let me bring him into the call. I spoke with him right before the show and told him this is going to happen. So he's expecting our phone call, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with Kevin. We really need to we need to unite the clan, so to speak, as Kevin used to say all the time. It's very important. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining us on the Age of Fission radio show. I'm delighted to have you with us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Glad to be back on UCY TV, huh?
Well, I don't know about that. As a guest, not permanently.
Well, that'd be great. I'd love to have you be a friend of our show because that is why I called you.
Sure.
I realize, the shit is hitting the fan. Things are getting serious. It's enough. The circular firing squad has got to end. We need to unite. As you say, unite the clans. We need to come together. And I thought I'd reach out to you kind of as a show of solidarity because...
Yes, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I am glad that you accepted the offer. So tell our listeners what you've been up to since you have left your own show in the last few months.
Well, documenting the Pacific Ocean, we really put a lot of work and a lot of weight into when we were going to get the historic low negative tide. And so put a tremendous amount of work, tremendous amount of research on getting exactly when the low tide is going to be in the best tide pools in the world. And so, believe it or not, if people knew where I slept and what I did, how I pulled that off, Castroville, last year when I was walking the coast of California a year and a half ago, I picked with the pickers in Castroville just to say I did it. I slept under the underpasses with them. So I met some really great Mexican pickers. So one of this kid named Chris is married into a family of them who born and raised in Carmel. So he called me and he says, you stay with us pickers. So I stayed in Castroville, and anybody who's ever been in Castroville realizes that's more Mexico than Mexico. It's got to be the only city in America that doesn't even have a Starbucks. So it was really fantastic experience, because they cooked for me and I stayed with them. But they were born and raised, Chris, in Carmel, and one of the daughters came as a very young child and lived in Carmel, and they've been, I've been in those tide pools my whole life since I was a boy, and so we got it negative tide. So I sit there and I waited and waited and waited, and I covered the entire peninsula, all of it. He and I, mostly myself, because he had to work, and we got that historic footage, which we may never get tied that low again, because a lot of people don't realize this in California, that we've had such high tide and such high sea surge that it's eaten away the thing, and so we just don't get those negative tides, and we got it perfect.
The erosion is really bad in
Erosion's
California.
Yes, and so the tide, so we have to sit there. When it happens, a lot of people don't know this on negative tide. When it happens right now, real quick, and you got to be Johnny on the spot. Right. So, I was set up camp there, and boom, it all washed out. It went out a mile within probably 30 minutes.
Wow.
And so I was able to get out into those historic tide pools and get it really documented. These are the most, these are the luscious tide pools, definitely on the California coast, maybe in the world, and document them. So it was historic work, and I did find one starfish, one,
That's,
so,
me and Kevin Finnegan, that's what we found, one starfish up here in Oregon.
In Monterey, I know a lot of the people in the aquarium, and before, I've been at this a long, long time. People don't realize this didn't, I just didn't show up and decide to be a anti-nuclear activist post-Fukushima. I've been at this since I was a boy. I mean, very young boy. And so I know a lot of people in the Monterey Aquarium, and, even a year and a half ago, they didn't want to hear from me. A few of the old retired ones on the wells, starving, they got it. But the mainstay in there, they didn't want to hear it from me. Oh, you got to hear them now. You got to hear them now. They're like, oh, Kevin, we love you. They're so friendly to me now, and they're like, I can't even believe you found one. Your work's so historic. We love you. And boy, they all talk about Fukushima now.
Isn't that going to be the story of our lifetimes, Kevin? Like in 5 years from now, we're being ridiculed. I have a guy hounding me on Twitter telling me that anti-nuke activists are going to be considered climate deniers in history. And I said, you know what? You're off your rocker, dude. Like, it was just really, we're going to be the people telling the truth. But in 5 years from now, when people are dropping off like human beings, right now we're seeing the animal collapse. 5 to 10 years, people are going to be dropping off, and they are already.
Well, we already are. The CDC came out. Like I've been saying, the CDC came out and made a statement that the first time in so-called America history, longevity is headed the other way. Now, you think about that with bypass surgery, with medical breakthroughs like, my own cancer 5 years ago, I would have died. And so, yet we're headed the other way. So it's already happening. And as far as the anti-nuclear establishment, which, we go back into the 70s and the 80s when it was so powerful and so strong, what happened is it got co-opted.
Yes, it
and
did.
So these people, by the left, by the way, we always go after the right for their denial and their thing, but let's get rid of who hijacked the movement. The left hijacked the movement. The left postured and groomed. I mean, we were looking through concert footage yesterday, me and another activist, of Springsteen, Bonnie Raitt, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Young, everybody who's who at the 1952 concerts in 1981, no nukes. And yet every one of those guys turned on us, because what they did is they came up with this lying thesis with the PR machines that nuclear was the cure for dirty coal. And they bought it. They took it. They groomed them.
The National, I don't know if you heard my show, Kevin, but I researched the National Resource Defense Fund out of New York City. They got an $11 million contribution that they're not required to disclose to us anymore. Nonprofit.
Right.
And immediately afterwards, they started working with the state of Illinois to keep those 2 leaking nuclear power plants open. And when I called them, they said, well, our goal is to stop coal. We think we're not pro-nuclear, but we think it's less of a hazard. We think these leaking nuclear power plants are less of a hazard than the state keeping their coal plants open. They literally said that to me.
Yeah, and see, that's what we're up against. So we're up against our own so-called own people, on both sides. So, we've been so squashed and postured into a corner that there isn't any of us. And so what happened, I stayed at it my whole life, even when I was on Wall Street. I never dropped my anti-nuclearism. I stayed with it because I knew what a evil mass killer it is and how it's nasty. But the thing is, the Obama administration, the Bush administration, and the Clinton administration, and more the Obama than the three, but it progressed to where they subsidized and just dumped these incredible sums of money through the Department of Energy into academia, into NGOs. They just infiltrated all society with billions and billions and trillions of dollars. And so they beat us with the money, and they beat the shit out of us. So when Fukushima happened, I'm like, well, we got a chance now. So this is important, Lonnie. It's really important that people understand this. Post-Fukushima, Fukushima changed the world. It changed everything. So what I did, you did, what any of us did before Fukushima really doesn't matter anymore. It's what we did after Fukushima. So as far as the anti-nuclear movement goes, post-Fukushima, because we had social media, we had YouTube. So, we had powerhouses like ENA News. We had Christina Radchick, who started right here on UCY Radio, her and, Jules Stan, and Smokey the Clown, Jan Brooks, Dana Dunford. And so the bottom line is this. Activism means active, and the work stands on its own. People can get pissed off at each other. They can have nuance like a family. Families have fights. But the so-called establishment anti-nuclear, which was Arnie Gunderson, Chris Busby, Helen Caldecott, I've been going at them for decades. Not that I don't like their work, because I appreciate their work, but I don't like post-Fukushima. They softballed it. And I'm like,
yes,
it is what it is.
I've had many conversations with each of them on that. Well, not Arnie Gunderson, but Busby. And you know who else?
Helen.
This is the thing. Those are the ones that really are in the spotlight. But the people like the NDRC, 350.org, all these other big organizations, Greenpeace, even beyond nuclear, they're considered establishment nuclear, anti-nuclears, right? And they look at us. We're out here activists on alternative radio, on YouTube. We're doing every venue, every media that we can, and they look at us as if we're like radical. Well, that's what I told one guy. I said, you know what? We actually need to be radical, because the non-radical is taking the pablum, like taking the syrup of just don't worry about it. Let's poison the earth. And
well, I got to tell you this story about radical. I've got to tell you this. So, how gung-ho you were, and we were about me going to Helen Caldecott's symposium 2 years ago.
It was me.
And you're the one that was insisted on it. And so we all went, and I'm glad we went. And so I got to tell you this. So Helen, there was a lot of debate with Helen about I speaking at it. It had been going on for over a year with Mally, with a lot of people. And so there was a lot of I was more than likely going to speak. And then Helen put the dagger to that at the end. So I sat with Noam Chomsky. So Noam was there for the only person, there was only two people that were there. I take it back, 4 people that were there the entire time for both days, from the beginning to the end. Myself, Noam Chomsky, Thomas Ackerman, and Kevin Finnegan. Patrick was there and Shane. So I'm sitting, with them, and Helen told me right to my face that I was not allowed to say the word Fukushima at this symposium. And I'm like, come on, Helen. And I'm talking to her. This is the first morning of the first day. And I'm like, are you kidding?
It was not about Fukushima. It was about nuclear. Her symposium was not about Fukushima. It was about nuclear weapons.
Well, it was more than just about nuclear weapons. So she told me to my face, and I have witnesses, that Fukushima, that us being on the internet, that scared her people. And I says, oh, your people? You mean your investors? She says, yeah. I says, your book buyers. She had watched her donations go down because of the word Fukushima. That's why she backed out. So we're sitting there. When she's having this conversation with me, Noam Chomsky is sitting right next to me. Noam looked at me, He looked right over and he says, Kevin, and he rolled his eyes. He said just like this, "You've got to be kidding me." That's what he said. So at the end of the symposium, I'm sitting with Noam. The very last, he was the keynote speaker. At the end, he spoke. Then Noam got up and spoke beautifully, like he always speaks beautifully. And so Helen gets up and speaks after Noam gets done and says, "We have to be radical. We have to be radical. Important to be radical on the anti-nuclear 7. That's all we're going to make any difference." And Noam looked right over at me, and he put his hand on my knee, and he squoze my knee. And he said, "You have got to be bleeping kidding me, Kevin." And he looked at me. He says, "Where does she get off?" That's what he said to me. So and I love Helen, do not get me wrong. She is incredible. Her work's been amazing. But Helen got addicted to the money and her lifestyle, and she's made a lot of it. And she's, she'll tell you, I'm a writer. And,
Well, look,
Noam will
Kevin,
tell you, I'm a linguistic.
I think her response there has a lot to do, like, she went to St. Louis, basically, and the people in St.
Yes.
Louis are not inviting her back because they did not like what she told them. She told them basically she was mortified. She did scare the daylights out of them. She told them, "You guys need to be evacuated immediately. You are in grave danger." And it's kind of like on St. Louis. I have a very hard time booking people for this show. She's right about that. It does turn people off, but frankly, this is my feeling. We still need to talk about it. We need to figure out a way to begin, because
but here's
really,
the thing, Lonnie.
We're all glowing,
here's the thing.
Kevin.
Here's the thing. I've been going off about St. Louis since I was years old. I've been going crazy about the mound there. And a lot of people, this is another thing that really burns my ass about people when they decide to get on CBS and grandstand late. Look, the Plowshares 13, Ian, look them up. The Kansas City 13. I wrote the answers to the questions to the judge. They did 13 years in prison. 13 years. So they've been breaking into the mound and screaming about this for decades. They've been arrested and put in prison over and over and over and over. So the last time they did it, which was in 2011, right after Fukushima, or 2012, when the Megan Rice situation was going on, they went into the courtroom, and the judge was the same judge. They'd been putting these people in prison for decades, fighting this monster. I've been fighting it. And she says, "You're finally convincing me." So she says, "I'm not going to, because Quigley gets up in the courtroom. They have great attorneys, and he says, "Did you arrest Rosa Parks? Was that against the law?" And the judge, "Yeah, it was against the law. Did she deserve to be in prison?" And, went on the thing. So the judge said, "Look, I'm starting to agree with you. I'm not going to put you in prison. Obviously, it doesn't work. You're just going to do it again. And I'm starting to believe you anti-nukers are right, and we've been wrong." She says, "So I have a set of questions." So I helped write the answers to the 12 questions, and the basically was exactly what you and I talked about in the beginning of this show was, okay, if we don't have nuclear weapons, and question 1, how about the Russians, the Cold War thesis, 2, well, isn't nuclear the answer to dirty coal? And we wrote, no. In fact, it's made much worse than coal. It's called false equivalency. And the judge responded to us. She says, "What an education I finally got. I finally realized that I was wrong the entire time. And you anti-nukers who stayed in this area, you were right." That's the judge in the St. Louis Mound. So it's a fight that's been going on for a long, long, long time, a thankless fight. When they had the very first town hall on St. Louis here just a couple years ago, right after the fire, I was in Vienna when the fire broke out. And so I chiped in on the Skype, on the live, me and Jane Swanson from Mothers for Peace. We spoke in that hearing, via Skype right off the get. So it isn't like people haven't been fighting their ass off the entire time. So people like the Plowshares and the people that have been fighting this young woman who has the foundation, when Helen just shows up, after they've been fighting their ass off for 30 years,
well,
and they
Helen
just grandstand
didn't just show up. Let's be clear. She didn't just show up. They invited her to come. They paid for her to come.
Right.
You know what I mean?
understand that.
And so she and Bob Alvarez did a symposium for the people there after they took a tour, and they were ghastly, shocked. Now this is my thing. They went to St. Louis. They've seen it. Why are they not writing papers and being on the air and talking about it as much as possible? There's only one representative, Chappelle Nadell, Representative Nadell. Her name is Chappelle Nadell. She's a representative Missouri and state senator. She's the only person who's constantly talking about it. All the other ones are like, oh, let's just sort of leave that alone.
Listen, Lonnie, this is the thing. It isn't like people say, oh, cover up, cover up, cover up. This was the lead story on CBS News several times. The lead on their freaking mainstream media. The number one story, first story, is St. Louis. So it is the American populace that we want to blame everybody else. We want to blame everything when we need to look in the mirror. The American populace does not want to hear it.
That's
They're
right.
in denial.
You're exactly right.
And so it isn't like it hasn't probably, me and Bob Alvarez, we go way back, and I love Bob, by the way, and at Helen Symposium, boy, he said the Fukushima word over and over and over, and hell, a freak was madder than hell at him, but he's fantastic. And, so there's lots of people out there that are very good, but post-Fukushima, it was, the small group of us who took the field via social media, and we were radical intense, because it's a whole different world post-Fukushima in the activist community. And the people who did the work post-Fukushima, the true work, the good work, like the small, teeny group of us, I can count them on two hands, we need to stay together. We can't have Dana Dunford going after Jan Milsky the clown and vice versa, because those two are linchpins. They are powerhouses. Dana Dunford's work is incredibly powerful. His work is fantastic, and so is Jan Brooks. They cannot go at each other on some little nuance on an argument about Arnie Gunderson, which is bullshit.
I also think we need to not be attacking the few scientists that are actually really, there's enough enemies for us to really go after. There's enough people who are in denial, and really, who cares what's at this is my feeling about what's going on at Fukushima. We don't know. I think it's way worse than anybody even thinks. We haven't even, and they are setting, can you believe this, Kevin? They have the Olympic Committee actually approved surfing for the Olympics.
Well, it just shows the propaganda machine.
And I heard a story yesterday. They're making wine out of apples specifically from Fukushima, and they're selling it to the residents of Fukushima to try to tell them there's no problem, they want to start expanding it, and they're going to offer it at the Olympics.
All propaganda. Now, you do know the story of the doctor who was killed the 30th.
Propaganda, though. That's the bullshit about it.
Well, and it's not working because we're the counter to propaganda, and that's why I've done the work that I do. I keep it organic as I possibly can, because everybody knows that's fake and tripe. We have to stay organic with our work. Here's the proof. This is why everybody's going to go back now, just like I said 5 years ago, to run back. I said there's going to be a smoking gun. You've heard me say it 10,000 times. The smoking gun will be the salmon collapse in 2016, because salmon go to sea for 5 years. And salmon had record returns on the Bonneville in 2015. Bonneville's the most babysitted of them all. So I said, and everybody arguing, and I said, it's called, I'm an old stats professor, it's called an outliner. Okay, so we know, so sure as shit, just like I said, and nobody believed me, nobody. They collapsed dramatically in 2015.
This is why nobody wanted to say anything, because the state was actually pouring tons of fish into the river. They were like, for sure we're going to. That's why they were so dumbfounded.
It's called escapement. It's called escapement. That this was a PhD that was done before Fukushima happened. That a PhD. It's called the Mitchell Act that exists in Oregon. The Mitchell Act is subsidy to the fishing industry in Oregon. They switched it from the Department of Agriculture to the Department of Commerce, and it turned into the old retail. But it's called escapement. They go to sea for 5 years. So this PhD evaluated that it costs $500 for every fish. Well, Tim and I have been working on the same matrix, and we're estimating it's costing $30,000 for every fish that's returning. So in the hatcheries, they have to clip one fin if it's a hatchery fish, vice versa. So they had record escapement. So finally they're waking up and they're saying, well, it's not, at the hatchery, it's in the they called the ocean the pasture. That's what marine biologists call it on the salmon end.
But they're not saying it's
we
from
got a problem.
Fukushima. They're saying it's from
Not yet.
change.
Not yet. But that's my point. This is the smoking gun. Because then, as an outliner, you have to look, okay, what happened 5 years ago? Because this wasn't a gradual collapse like in the 90s or the gill netting or the DDT. This was an epic off-the-cliff collapse. So as a staff professor, statistically, you have to look for the outliner. Well, obviously, something happened. Well, hello, Fukushima happened. It's a catastrophe. So this will be the line in the sand. It's unarguable proof that Fukushima is killing the Pacific Ocean. It's unarguable now. Unarguable. And so scientifically.
They will argue. That's the 90% rule, Kevin. I mean, really, seriously, John Goffman studied the Japanese people for 20 years. That besides the medical thing, that's what he discovered. They deny radiation causes harm and underreport the negative effects by 90%. And they are sticking with that, period. They do not. I mean, children are dying. Did you see that?
Well, they started that thesis clear back at Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yes,
like I said, through the Department of Energy, so they just run right back to the same playbook. Now you got, Obama was propped up by Exelon.
What industry is it? What industry have we ever heard of in the history of the world where the taxpayers pay for the building of the units, the taxpayers pay for the product, the minimal product that the unit produces,
and you can't sue them.
And then when it falls apart, we pay for it, and nobody is at all accountable. Everybody gets off scot-free.
Price Anderson, no industry in the history of mankind. Trillions and billions of dollars. The Price-Anderson Act, which has been close to being overturned multiple times, but it's never been overturned. They just turned on the faucet of the Manhattan Project, and they never turned it out. And Oregon is the worst violator of it all. Oregon State University, Kathleen Higley is the worst violator. New Scale up there, they just get pumped in billions and billions and billions and billions of freaking money to propagate this lie.
That's right.
And so it's all about the money.
They're graduate students. That graduate student, I think his name is Reyes, I believe. He's the guy that developed tiny modular.
Let me tell you about Reyes. Now, so you know this. So that's the thesis. And his brother is the attorney general here in Utah. They're criminals.
Is it really?
Yes. Get this. You know who his cousin is? His first cousin. Wait till you hear this one. You know that madman, crazy psychopath who's president of the Philippines? That's Reyes' first cousin.
No, really?
That's Reyes' first cousin. Now, Reyes...
What, a $12 million
because that's the thesis here in Utah. So it was started right here in Idaho at Atomic City through the nuclear subsidy, the DOE. So the first investor who, in NuScale, I'm the guy that broke their back. You can look it up. When I was fighting Blue Castle, when I was in the bone marrow transplant center, and even leading up, I'm the one that exposed they had the fake funding at Lead Dog Hedge Fund. Then I exposed that they had a fraudulent fake funding for NuScale. So the guy who originally put up the money for NuScale got indicted by the SEC. So did Lead Dog at the same time. And I'm the guy that exposed all that. They indicted him, and it was a pyramid scheme, and he got found guilty by the SEC. That's the early money that was put in. Well, then Obama gets in, and he gave NuScale a big, hundreds of millions of dollars through the Department of Energy. So the Department of Energy started this. Reyes came through the Department of Energy, and then Obama gave him $128 million first, then another matching $128 million. So it's just, and not, you saw the video when I caught them inside the Utah State House where I snuck in and I got the video right in their faces and I caught them red-handed behind the stairs. That's NuScale. That's Reyes. And I'm holding up the paperwork of Reyes, his brother, who's the Utah State Attorney General, who's a criminal, and I'm holding it up right there in front of their face. And there's the video proof right there. You can look it up. Kevin, Google it. There it is. It's probably got a couple thousand views. So it's a criminal enterprise. The Nuclear Crime Syndicate is exactly who it is, the Nuclear Energy Crime Syndicate. It's a criminal enterprise.
Yeah,
period.
Well, they actually do look at us as assets. They look at us as like their little slaves. They really do look at us like we are disposable. So, Kevin, you know what? This is one of the things we did want to announce, that we're going to be getting the Post-Ignorance Project website back up relatively soon. I'm working on a website that called For No Nukes Northwest. working with Mimi Gurman on this. Our big
good.
push
Mimi's
is to
great.
close. Yes, we really are serious about closing down the Columbia Generating Station. I give out Elliot Mainzer's. Karen Newell told me that Elliot Mainzer, she's done lots of work on this. She says that Elliot Mainzer at the Bonneville Power Station has the authority to shut Columbia Generating Station down in an emergency. So let me give out his number. It's 800-282-3713. Call his office again. I'm encouraging all my listeners to call at least once a week and demand that the Columbia Generating Station be shut down. Now, that's a big order.
Do you know they're in a scram right now?
Yes.
Did you know they've had 2 scrams this year?
Yes, and they
2 this year.
They attempted to start it back up, but it's gone back down. So something is seriously wrong up there.
Yeah, it's called a scram, and big time.
You bet.
And that's exactly what happened at 3 Mile Line. That's exactly what happened at Chernobyl with a scram. Exactly.
And they are not going to tell us if it has a nuclear meltdown.
No,
they
we'll
will
never
not
know.
tell us. They'll
Hell
just
no.
let us, unless it explodes and they can't deny it, they will never say jack to us.
No, not the way they've circled the wagons post Fukushima now.
No, and then there's these women that are out there, mothers for nuclear, that are out there saying that nuclear energy is like the best
We've
thing.
been going at it with them. I've been fighting personally with them, and so because I'm involved with Mothers for Peace at Diablo so heavily, and I'm so involved with the San Onofre shutdown, and Diablo. By the way, so your listeners know this, and I'm the only one that knows this because I'm working behind the scenes with the Department of Energy and PG&E in California. So, the nuclear is coming out of San Onofre. We have it on the tarmac there, way ahead of schedule. And, it's supposedly going to be buried in, my line, not on the fucking beach. So this is breaking news. They filed a temporary permit to put it in New Mexico at WIPP. Now, WIPP's reopened. It reopened just a few days ago. They have accepted, this is the word I'm getting from inside PG&E behind the scenes, that the Department of Energy has accepted San Onofre temporary permit to move the waste to New Mexico, so it's not going on the beach. And this is what I was told 2 weeks ago, behind the scenes. And I can't disclose my source, but it's real. So that's a major accomplishment for us, a major. And at Diablo, so these girls that are mothers for nuclear, who lobbied inside Illinois, that was a major blow to us when Illinois bailed out Exelon. They had 5 lobbyists for every one of our acts. Gail Snyder runs that show there, our group.
They also had the National Resource Defense Fund, a so-called nonprofit, quote, environmentalist group, working with the legislators to keep it open. That infuriates me.
Yes, well, they had 5 lobbyists. They had all the money against us. It's Exelon. I mean, that's their home.
It's so outrageous, and it's just beyond comprehension. That's when I hit the charts, Kevin. When I had that so-called environmentalist group, whose job it is to protect the environment, telling me that they think that a nuclear power plant, leaking nuclear power plants are not as dangerous as ongoing coal production in the state of Illinois.
Oh, it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. They should be locked up.
You know what?
They're criminals.
Let's face it. Their headquarters is in New York City, and they are saying nothing about Indian Point. And when I asked them about that, they're like, well, it's not that urgent. Otherwise, we would be notified. It's not, obviously, tritium is not that dangerous.
Well, you saw when Kevin Finnegan and I was at Indian Point, and the police freaking circled us and went after us hardcore immediately. And you know about the Como, as I call it, status quo. $7.6 billion, and Chicago, New York are working behind the scenes together. They're mob. It's a criminal enterprise. Exelon, Barry Antoinette, Barack Obama, David. These are criminals, hardcore criminals through New York. And Exelon did not even own 9 Mile Island or Fitzpatrick. They announced they shut them out. Then after the fact, they bought them for like $1.8 million. Then they get $7.6 billion in the bailout. It's nothing but a criminal looting of the New York taxpayer and the Illinois taxpayer, because the federal subsidy is not enough for these rats. So now they're going to every state house, and they're going to go into Michigan on Palisades, and I can guarantee they will be in that house. They're going to be in the Utah house trying to bring up Luke House, and I'm going to be down there fighting them tooth and nail. That's what even the governor says and everything in Utah and Idaho. They're like, they know. They'll fuck with me because I got my YouTube camera, and I'll put it in their fucking face. I'm not afraid of these criminals. We just need to expose through our YouTube cameras and are intense active. We have to expose the criminal activity between these people, and we have to video it. We have to go to the state houses. We have to show up in there. We have to go interview, like you see my interviews with Governor Herbert. He can't dance out of them because he knows I got a YouTube camera in my hand. And so he knows that I got him, and so he's not going to lie to me because he knows I have a big audience, and he knows I'm going to expose them. So we have to do the work.
And we also have to continue to reach out. This is my feeling. Like, we have to continue to reach out to the establishment anti-nukers to create an inclusiveness with us, because there are many, many, many more anti-nuke activists on YouTube's, I believe, that are actively engaged in this than any of the people supporting, the like Beyond Nuclear. They have a lot of subscribers, but their subscribers are passive. They do nothing. They don't go out in the streets. They don't show up at protests.
Well, Kevin, he said Ackerman went and interviewed Kevin Camp, and Kevin Camp told him right to his face, I'm not an anti-nuclear activist. When are you going to raise and realize I'm not an anti-nuclear activist? And a lot of these so-called establishment will tell you that to their face. And they have an NGO. That's the nonprofit thing really screwed us, because you can hold 20% of that. You know that. You're a tax person. So these people are doing it. They're profiteering. Now, John Hurley himself, when I gave the inaugural speech at the Million Mass March, John Hurley, who's head of the National Press Corps, came with Goldie Hawn, by the way, to hear me speak. They both sat there and listened to me speak, and he had a long talk with me, and the first thing he brought up was Beyond Nuclear. He says, Kevin, you do know they're Beltway insiders who are freaking show up to every party there are, and it's all about profit. They're not anti-nuclear. John Hurley said that to me, and I said, I do realize that. I've known that for years. They're profiteering, and I'm okay with that. Because, at least Tom Hartman puts them on his show, and Tom Hartman does call attention to this, in a softball way, and same with Vice, same with all these people that have grandstanded it, but at least they're getting some kind of the story out there. But the false equivalency hurts us.
I think that I think our movement that we have taken here on alternative radio and on YouTube, we actually get to help them change their minds about this, to help them see that we're not raving lunatics, that we are educated, we are self-educated, just like they're self-educated. Many of them are not scientists. Yes. The difference between us is we don't go out and lobby for funding from major corporations. And
we don't have any money. We're grassrooters.
The NDRC, the National Resource Defense Fund, that guy makes $500,000 a year.
Right.
We can go and find their 990 reports, and the people who are really working against us and using this, it's all on paper. So we have to get smart and learn how. We can each use our own skills to highlight what's going on. And speaking of that, let's talk about 3/11 coming up, because I really want to organize. I think it's super important for us to get in every city that we possibly can protests on 3/11 with big signs that says Fukushima's the new F word. That came from Theo, Hippie with the Gun, on YouTube. I think it's a great statement, because we are not really allowed to talk about Fukushima anymore. It's like, oh, that's passé, but it is worse. It's worse now than it was 6 years ago. It's not.
Oh, come on. I mean, my whole crowd, we have to stay, look, the way I've ran my entire thing, I got cancer 5 years ago and was all but dead. I've been fighting for my life. In fact, the hospital just declared me cured yesterday.
Great.
People don't realize I've been in this fight. So, but the thing is, I walk with the monk, as you know, to Diablo Canyon, which I did 2 years ago. Last year I went to San Onofre for the 5th anniversary, and we do a big thing. In San Diego we did it. I'll be back there again. I'll be in San Luis Obispo is where I'm going, with Mothers for Peace, with Jane Swanson, with Linda Seeley. They're fantastic. You want to talk grassroots? So on 3/11, that's where I'll be. And so it's important that I'm there, because the Diablo Canyon is the major fight. And these women that are saying their mothers, it's a slap right in the face. Now, Linda Seeley, I want people to be very important. At Fort Dead at Ohio, when Linda Krause was murdered right there, she's standing right there. That's Linda. That's her best friend. So she's been at this from day one, and same was Jane Swanson. Mothers for Peace are the real deal, and they're hardcore. On Valentine's Day, when I was at Pismo, when I did my Valentine's of Blue Hearts, I went over to the public hearing idea. There were 2 people there, myself and Jane Swanson, and I live in Utah, and so these women that are going back against, they work for Diablo. They're employees of Diablo. They make a lot of money. They're funded by the Department of Gender, Livermore. They have a lot of money. So, but I talk to people in Europe, whatever they're saying, we can see that these people, so the way I do it, we do it, it is. The thing that's beautiful about this, people can identify that, look, Kevin Blanch, these guys are organic. They truly are organic. And the only time we're ever going to win anything is at a grassroots level. And that's what we are. We're pioneers. And the pioneer takes time. And, and there's a lot of infighting, and there's a lot of family, and a lot of people get hurt, and they think, just like a young family growing up with no money, and we're fighting. But, look, we have to understand that we are a family. The post-gender. Now, guys like, it's important. Guys, vloggers and bloggers like, what was his name? Dutch Sense. He grandstanded, and then he turned on us and said it was awful. We need to distance ourselves from those people. We need to understand there's a small group, there's probably only 10 of us out there that are hardcore, real anti-nuclear bomb and energy activists that are in social media realm.
I came into this late, Kevin. I did not know that Dutch Sense was ever an anti-nuker. I follow his...
Oh, he did a lot of work on the food. Well, not an anti-nuker. He was, because people need to identify, there's a difference between reporters and info artists and actual anti-nuclear activists. Now, Dunford's an anti-nuclear activist, whether he thinks he is or not up there, Dana. And by the way, the whole setup on the Palco situation was a total setup. I was set up. Yes. He was set up. Palco Energy was a setup. But he is an activist, and, I'm the one that got him the boat. I mean, that's a horrible, ugly thing, and it scared a lot of people off.
Contributed for that whole thing about the boat and that whole journey that he did. I mean, this is the thing with the issue is we feel isolated because there's no connecting thing. I was very happy to hear that you're getting a website together where people can connect their own organizations.
Well, it's going to be the post-dinner. It's going to be the same old website. And this is important. We talk about this real quick before I forget, Lonnie. ENE News. Now, this is important. Okay, they got on this very early. They were on it with me in symphony with BP when we were going on BP. They live in Florida. Okay, ENE News. People don't know this. EE News is a secret freaking Department of Energy program news source that you, as a nuclear energy, as a PR firm, you have to pay to play. I think it's $15,000 up front, 15 or 20 grand a year. And it's their secret news site and website. They link in together and they create their propaganda for the nuclear industry. It's called EE News. It's run out of Washington, D.C. So this person that did this, and I'm not going to disclose who it is, but I know who it is. ENE News broke ranks from inside. Was a hardcore whistleblower who did incredible work. I mean, someday this person needs some kind of freaking award. Well, a few months ago, done, over. Under heavy bombardment attack under the Obama administration, went after them, just like they have me, just like thing, So that's what we're up against. We're up against a PR machine of incredible sound.
It got shut down really by pressure from the government because ENE News just went silent.
Not pressure. And it's one person, by the way. It's not a group. It's one person in Florida. And incredible work. So I've been there the whole time. Incredible work. So we have to pick up the slack with the Post-Ignorance Project. We have Eric Jordan, that beautiful website. People are so turned on by his graphic design and his shirts. Now, a lot of people don't know this. This is important because Eric is he's an amazing man, and so is his beautiful wife. They live in New Zealand. He threw up his hands on, he was the graphic designer for a lot of video games, and he just said, fuck it. He realized he was feeding the propaganda machine. His mother got cancer. A lot of people don't know this. His beautiful mom in L.A. This is a heartbreaking story. She got cancer just a couple years ago, post-Fukushima, in her breast, and thought she had it beat. I did a couple videos in honor of her. She died. And it's very heartbreaking. And she's young and beautiful and in shape, did everything right, and she passed. And, they have a heartbroken family right now. And so just like us.
Isn't that the story that we're all going to be getting here? Is like, really, it doesn't matter how healthy you are. Cancer kills you. The exposure to nuclear radiation destroys your body, and we have got to get some accountability and
it doesn't matter how much money you have. Look, I've been in the number one bone marrow transplant unit in the fucking world. Thimble Peterson's at the top of LDS. It's the number one. I mean, it's cutting edge to get. I watch these gazillionaires come in. I was head of the support group. I got chased out. I'm the only one alive. I mean, the type of survival in my body was less than 1%. I mean, 0.06. Thimble will tell you, he says, you're the only guy I know that's ever survived this willing without a bone marrow transplant. And yet these PR rats and these trolls and these firms go after us like this is so, number one, it's illegal what they've done to us. What you tell me an industry that could get away. Dana Dunford's in a wheelchair. I was in critical condition. AML, leukemia, the very top of the disabled list, which are felonies in every state to go after a person like me. Yet these trolls and these rats, right in your face, can go after us. The Palco, Kevin Palco, Dot's character, all these people, and they get away with it. I mean, they threatened Jan when her son passed away. She lost her 21-year-old son, and these rats are doing this. So what other possible people besides anti-nuclear activists could get away? I mean, anybody else would go to prison for this.
Well,
not us. They can do anything to us.
The DOE just fired an employee who honestly answered and thoroughly answered the staff's questions when they were investigating low-level.
Not the only employee. That's Dr. Nikolai.
No. I'm talking about Noel Metting. Well,
it's not Noel. It's Nikolai. Is the first name? Yeah, right. That's the president. That's the lead. That's not just some employee. That's the guy who ran the whole program, the top one. That was the president that they fired for. He put up a graph of Fukushima.
I think we're talking about different people, Kevin, so that means they fired two people, because this is a female who recently went...
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, right. Excuse me, her. Sorry. Yeah, but that's her. We're talking about the same person. Her, excuse me. But she was the president. She was the head of the entire low-level radiation, which was put through Congress to try to shut us up in 2014. Now, you remember when I went to Washington Square in 2014 for the Megan Rice sentencing, and then I was headed to D.C. because I was working with Wyden and Boxer's office, and we were going to have congressional hearings on San Onofre and Fukushima. She was going to speak at it. I was going to speak at it. And then all of a sudden I got an email from Barbara Boxer's office that said it's been pushed underground. So these underground hearings happened. She spoke out of it. Obama fired her, not only fired her, threatened her, and threatened everybody else who he said one peep. That's kind of bombardment there. And so this is Lamar had the Senate hearings from Texas on this congressional hearings. This docket just got released on December 20th on their findings. And their findings were, and you can look it up, the findings were that the Obama administration illegally squashed anybody who was talking about radiation. And they illegally, and it says blatantly right there. And this is a Congress, and Congress has all the powers of a court. And, these people need to go to jail. And so...
Yeah, it actually says this in the article, prohibiting federal employees from providing information and communication with Congress is a violation of the Anti-Lobbying Act. There is they basically just fired this woman Metting because they were viewing...
Yeah, I got her mixed up with what's his name, but it's her. And they fired her.
Yes. This was all about the DOE's low-dose radiation research program, which the government was reviewing so they could make an informed decision. She gives them the information, and they fire her, and Congress refuses to indict anyone.
Well, see, when Trump takes office, now I'm no Trump fan, but at least it's going to be a shakeup. And, here's my hope. Now that when Obama's out and his cronies that were so hardcore pro-nuclear energy, he was propped up by Exelon, because he threatened them just like her. She even says not only was she fired, she was threatened. So the Obama administration operated just like a crime syndicate, and you can look up, he didn't know what Hanford was. But when they leave office, maybe some of these whistleblowers can come forward on. I predict they will in 2017. Fukushima, these people are going to come because Obama's not going to have the power and the ability to throw these people in jail and just threaten them with their jobs and their lives, which he's done. Now, this is important too, Lonnie, and I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but the night of the December 30th, the doctor in Fukushima, Japan, the gynecologist who stayed behind to document all this and run the hospital, take care of all the Fukushima workers as they're dying, and he's been documenting. He was found dead December 30th. His house burnt down, and it's real, and his body was found. Now, remember, people need to really think, and they think, oh, they wouldn't kill him. This is a murder. Remember, who runs the cleanup of Fukushima, Japan? And this is the part. This is the linchpin that wake everybody up. The Japanese mob. What are they? I mean, we're talking one of the most ruthless, dangerous, nastiest mobs. And I mean, they make the Italian mobs look like freaking church mice. This is who runs the show over there. This guy was reporting, because our people have talked to him. I've talked to him multiple times through emails. He was documenting the workers dying. So what they're doing with the workers, as soon as they die, you know, they're burning them, and, you know, they are showing up. There's all kinds of people finding urns all over in Buddhist temples all over. Just says Fukushima worker. So they disposed. This guy was keeping documentation on him. They were showing up. He's at the hospital in Fukushima. He's the only one there, and he just magically burns to death. You know, this is a murder. There's no doubt in my mind it's a murder.
Yeah, mine either. I mean, men either. And they are really, literally, like, let's just face it, they're willing to kill children. They're going to kill anybody in their way that gets in their way of wanting to expose
they're ruthless. This is the most ruthless criminal enterprise in history. They are ruthless.
And it's worldwide. It's beyond comprehension.
Well, that's why the Olympics. Go ahead.
Well, this is the Olympics. That's exactly where I was going. You know, in the Olympics, they're actually using the wood. They're building the stands out of Fukushima wood in the Fukushima.
Well, let's get real. People need to know this. I'm standing right at the Olympic downhill, the 2002. I'm standing right there because I'm outside. I'm looking at it right now. The most corrupt Olympics ever. This one's going to pass. The IAEA, okay, and the IOC are the exact identical people in Vienna. Ran right out of the UN. The International Olympic Committee, Criminal Enterprise, Duncan Cash, and the International Atomic Energy, who took control of the UN, are the exact identical same people. And when people wake up and realize that, and they are the World Health Organization also, who they hijacked that, and they all did that through the UN, and they hijacked the UN. They got veto power over the UN. So we're taking on the cabal that runs the world. We're talking on this is the greatest, this is the greatest David versus Goliath story in history.
It is, actually. Well, look, this is what they did. Why do you think Trump appointed Nikki Haley? It's because Duke Energy just got approved for 2 new nuclear power plants. Yes. Plus, we are storing the waste from Europe and Fukushima in her state, and she objected. So what did Trump do?
Not no more. You know where it's going now?
Utah, I think, isn't it?
No, it's in New Mexico. So the Mox fuel plant at Savannah River.
Right. They're sending it all to Carlsbad. It's a collapsed whip plant. That's a brilliant idea.
Whip reopen.
They just keep coming with these more brilliant let's kill the planet ideas. It's incomprehensible that none of them have the courage to stand up and speak out for the right thing. Like, it's incomprehensible to me that we have probably several 100,000 nuclear workers who just click their heels, seek Heil, watch their children get sick, and say nothing.
Because they're cowards. They're fucking cowards. It's that simple. They're cowards. I know lots of them. The container that blew up was built right here, Peterson container. I know them all. You know, I mean, there's a lot of the heavy cabals right here in Utah, and I know them, and I'm not afraid of them. You know, and even Governor Herbert will tell you, Kevin Blanch is ruthless. He's fearless. Because, look, once you get cancer like I did and it's in your body, you watch all your loved ones go of it, whatever. I mean, like I said, what the fuck do I got left to lose?
Well, that's exactly right, isn't it, Kevin? Like, fearless. That's what my intro says. Love is greater than fear, and happiness is resistance. And I did a video last night, and I said, happiness is resistance, and guess what? I'm happy to resist. I am not going to fucking let
Me
them
too.
roll. Even though it's catastrophic, it may be too late for the fucking planet. I'm not going to just lay down and let them kill my grandchildren. I am not going to say nothing and go, well, we have to just get used to it. Somebody said that to me. It's beyond helping, so you just have to get used to it and learn how to have a decent life.
Oh, fuck that. Fuck that. So listen, so in the 70s and the 80s, the anti-nuclear establishment was here in Utah. And, I want people just to Google Carrie Barefoot Dixon, one school teacher, an older woman, and I want you to listen to the way she spoke in Oklahoma when they were going to put black, either you stop black rights or we will kill. I mean, intense, radical, hardcore. This is an older woman. And, not Megan Rice, Madeline Rice, who I knew personally, her, John Goffman, and by the way, I knew John Goffman personally. And John Goffman, when he was younger, and what they did to him, you know how hardcore intense? So Goffman spoke at the trial in, I believe it was Vermont or Maine, when they were building a nuclear reactor, and an organic farmer who's still alive, who Bob Alvarez knows, who's still alive, an organic farmer went in, and as they were building it, blew the fucking thing up, an organic farmer. He went to trial. John Goffman was the expert witness in the trial. And so the judge was so compelled by John Goffman's incredible work that the judge says, okay, you're guilty. But you know what he sentenced him to? I believe he did a year. Can you imagine? He blew up a nuclear reactor. This is the kind of resistance that used to exist. But now look what they do to us. They put us under the prison immediately. They will kill us.
They put a nun in jail. That's the ridiculousness.
Yeah.
I'm actually interviewing Dave Ratcliffe on Thursday. I'm pre-recording an interview, and he has been talking to me. And it's hilarious. When I first talked to him, he called me yesterday. It was a great way to start the new year. He called me up and said, "Sorry, I've been delaying. I've just had a lot of going on." And we were talking, and I said, "So why you've been doing this a long time?" He has all the archives of Goffman's work. He's doing all kinds of incredible things. And I said, so why? He goes, you want to know why? He goes, this is America post the Civil War because they lost their slave base.
Yeah.
Like, I was certainly not an answer I was expecting. They lost their slave base.
Well, look, again, and this is important, post-Fukushima, the grassrooters, and there's a handful, Dana Dunford, Jan Smokey the Clown, Christina Consuelo Radchick, Kevin Blanch, this small, teeny group that has been relentless day in, day out, battling this organically and things. This is a pioneer group. Lonnie in Oregon, even Ackerman up there needs to come off his high horse, and all these people, Patrick McCormick, Kevin Finnegan, the young freaking thing, all Shane Russell, Maureen Burke, these small people, even Patrick Penry. Look, the work is the work, and enough of this group. We're not talking about Caldecott and Busby and Gunderson. They're their own people.
People are saying even Radchick. Radchick is really ill right now for unknown reasons.
She's had a hell of a time. She's had a hell of a time for years. And she, by the way, I know her very personally. I'm the one that introduced her to her and Jan. That's how they know each other. And her daughter lives right by me. I know her path and everything. She's done this all with no money. I mean, nothing. I mean, and you think about the work she's done with zero. And, you get mad at her for something she did, whatever. Each other can get mad. We're not perfect. We never claim to be perfect. That's why we're human beings. We are flawed fuckers. But look what we're up against. Look at the fight. And we're frustrated. I mean, look how frustrated we are. I mean, we're fighting our ass off with no money, telling the greatest tale. We're fighting the greatest fight in human history, and that's unarguable. And we were right the whole time, and yet we get no platform. We get attacked. Of course we're frustrated. Of course we're going to lash out. Of course we're going to get mad at times, and we're going to make mistakes.
It's true.
And that's who we are.
We've got 15 seconds left. I hope you come back and be a friend of our show.
I will,
Thank you for joining
sure.
us. You've been listening to Kevin Blanch. Put your courage feet on, you guys. Take action. Your voice matters. We are going to have this conversation again. Happy New Year. Let's make it work. Let's end nuclear. Thanks, Kevin.